Внимание! Внимание! Говорит Москва. Передаем важное правительственное сообщение. Граждане и гражданки Советского Союза, сегодня в 4 часа утра, без всякого объявления войны, германские вооруженные силы атаковали границы Советского Союза. Началась Великая Отечественная война советского народа против немецко-фашистских захватчиков. Наше дело правое. Враг будет разбит. Победа будет за нами.
The Eastern Front, also known as the Ostfront, served as the epicenter of the most colossal military confrontation in human history. Isolated from World War II, the war on the Eastern Front itself stands as the largest conflict ever witnessed. Over a span of 4 years, an astonishing 400 Red Army and German divisions clashed along a front that stretched over 1,000 miles. Tragically, more than 27 million Soviet soldiers and civilians, along with nearly 4 million German troops, lost their lives amidst the relentless brutality of this theater of war. The warfare on the Eastern Front was characterized by its sheer ferocity and comprehensiveness, featuring monumental clashes such as the Battle of Kursk, the largest armored engagement in history, and the protracted siege of Leningrad, which endured for nearly 900 agonizing days. Additionally, scorched-earth tactics, the utter devastation of countless villages, mass deportations, mass executions, and numerous atrocities perpetrated by both sides further marred the conflict's landscape. Complicating matters, divisions within the Soviet Union itself occasionally fractured its forces. Early in the war, some factions even welcomed the German invaders and fought against the Red Army, harboring hopes that Hitler's troops would deliver them from Stalin's rule. As desperation mounted in later stages of the war, Stalin issued Order No. 227, famously known as "not a step back." This directive prohibited Soviet forces from retreating without explicit orders. Commanders who attempted to withdraw faced tribunals, while foot soldiers confronted blocking detachments composed of their own comrades, prepared to use lethal force against any attempting to flee. Today, we are going to look at some insane facts about the war. Joseph Stalin disregarded early warnings of the impending German attack. The invasion of the Soviet Union by Germany stands as one of the most significant surprise attacks in military history. However, according to multiple sources, it should not have caught anyone off guard. Despite the famous non-aggression pact signed between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany in August 1939, there was widespread anticipation that Adolf Hitler harbored ambitions of attacking the Soviets, whom he regarded as an inferior race, as soon as the opportune moment arose. Surprisingly, Stalin seemed oblivious to Hitler's true intentions. In the lead-up to the German offensive, he dismissed numerous reports from Soviet spies, cautioning about an imminent invasion. Additionally, he accepted Hitler's explanation that the sudden presence of German troops near the Soviet border was merely a precaution to shield them from British bombing raids. Astonishingly, he even instructed his troops not to engage German spy planes, despite repeated accidental incursions into Soviet airspace. Stalin's perplexing faith in the Third Reich was shattered on June 22, 1941, when the Germans initiated Operation Barbarossa, launching a massive invasion of the Soviet Union with over 3 million soldiers. 2. Most people believed Germany would quickly crush the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa was conceived with the ambitious goal of achieving a decisive victory over the Soviet Union within a remarkably short time frame, ranging from 3 to 6 months. However, during the initial days of the invasion, there was a prevailing belief that the Soviet Union might capitulate even sooner than anticipated. In the early stages of the campaign, the German forces inflicted significant damage, with approximately 150,000 Soviet soldiers either killed or wounded in the opening week. Furthermore, the Nazi Luftwaffe demonstrated its prowess by downing over 2,000 Soviet aircraft in the first 2 days of the operation. As German tanks and troops advanced through Soviet territory in a three-pronged assault, many observers from outside the conflict began to predict an impending Soviet defeat, speculating that it might transpire in mere weeks or even days. Nevertheless, the subsequent events would reveal the tenacity of the Soviet Union. Despite early setbacks, the Soviets displayed an apparent abundance of manpower that ultimately proved insurmountable for the German invaders. By November 1941, the Germans had succeeded in incapacitating several million Soviet soldiers, but they had also sustained over 700,000 casualties themselves. As the Soviets launched ferocious counterattacks, the notion of a swift German victory became untenable, compelling the Nazis to abandon such aspirations. This marked the beginning of a protracted conflict that would persist for an additional 3.5 years, reshaping the dynamics of the war on the Eastern Front. 3. Extreme weather conditions played a crucial role in the Soviet victory. In addition to the formidable might of the Red Army, the German forces encountered a relentless adversary in the form of General Winter, a moniker that encapsulated the lethal embrace of the severe Soviet cold. Adolf Hitler's grand strategy had initially aimed to subdue the Soviet Union before the unforgiving winter took hold. However, due to logistical challenges and unexpectedly resilient Soviet resistance, the German advance ground to a halt at Moscow's doorstep in late 1941. At this critical juncture, German troops, still donned in their summer uniforms, resorted to desperate measures, employing newspaper and straw as makeshift insulation against sub-zero temperatures. Consequently, frostbite became an epidemic, with approximately 100,000 cases reported by the end of 1941, resulting in nearly 15,000 amputations. Moreover, the extreme cold took a toll on Nazi heavy machinery, rendering tanks and jeeps unresponsive, while causing guns and artillery to freeze and malfunction. In stark contrast, the Soviets exhibited greater adaptability to the frigid environment, utilizing specially designed equipment, including rifles, skis, and camouflage, enabling them to continue combat operations even in the most inhospitable conditions. The annual deep freeze would continue to bedevil the German armies throughout the remainder of the war. However, the warmer months provided only marginal respite. Soviet summers brought scorching heat, while spring and fall ushered in the miserable rainy season known as the Rasputitsa, rendering roads waterlogged and often impassable. These seasonal challenges further compounded the difficulties faced by both sides in this grueling conflict on the Eastern Front. 4. Stalin ordered Soviet forces to fight to the last man. Upon witnessing the capture of millions of Soviet troops during the early stages of the German Blitzkrieg, Joseph Stalin responded with 2 significant orders that left an indelible mark on the Eastern Front during World War II. In August 1941, he issued Order No. 270, which declared that any soldiers who surrendered or allowed themselves to be taken as prisoners of war were to be deemed traitors under the law and would face execution if they ever returned to the Soviet Union. Subsequently, in July 1942, he further intensified his directives with the famous Order No. 227, commonly referred to as the Not One Step Backward Decree. This order stipulated that individuals deemed as cowards were to be liquidated on the spot. Under this mandate, any troops found retreating were to be subjected to shelling or gunfire carried out by specialized units known as blocking detachments. These units were positioned behind the front lines and tasked with the grim duty of shooting any soldier attempting to flee. Stalin's stringent orders were intended to bolster the fighting spirit of the Red Army, and they were not mere empty threats. According to certain estimates, Soviet barrier troops may have been responsible for the deaths of as many as 150,000 of their fellow countrymen throughout the course of the war, including approximately 15,000 whole during the brutal Battle of Stalingrad. These orders, while undoubtedly harsh, reflect the desperate circumstances and uncompromising resolve that characterized the Eastern Front during World War II. 5. It included the largest tank battle in military history. The Eastern Front of World War II, while notably associated with the protracted siege of Leningrad and the harrowing Battle of Stalingrad, also witnessed a monumental armored confrontation that stands as a testament to the immense scale and strategic significance of the theater. In July 1943, during the Battle of Kursk, an awe-inspiring spectacle unfolded as approximately 6,000 tanks, 2 million soldiers, and 5,000 aircraft converged in what would become one of the most pivotal engagements of the war. The roots of this momentous campaign can be traced back to the German ambition to eliminate a 70-mile-long salient or bulge in the Soviet defensive lines located in Western Russia. Adolf Hitler, in a calculated move, delayed the onset of the offensive for several weeks to allow the deployment of the Nazis' formidable new Tiger tanks to the front lines. This pause inadvertently afforded the Soviets a valuable window of opportunity to bolster their defenses across the entire region. When the German offensive finally commenced, they were met with a relentless storm of mines and artillery fire, which exacted a heavy toll, resulting in the destruction of hundreds of tanks and a staggering death toll of approximately 350,000 men on both sides. Recognizing their inability to match the Soviets in a protracted battle of attrition, the Germans reluctantly made the decision to withdraw from the region on July 13th. This retreat marked a significant turning point, signifying the culmination of Nazi offensive operations on the Eastern Front. The Battle of Kursk, with its colossal forces and epic clashes, left an enduring imprint on the annals of military history, underscoring the magnitude of the Eastern Front's role in shaping the course of World War II. Both sides engaged in large-scale atrocities and war crimes. The Eastern Front in World War II not only dwarfed the conflict in the Western Front in terms of scale, but was also characterized by a level of brutality that is difficult to comprehend. It was a theater where both the Axis and Soviet forces consistently disregarded international laws and perpetrated acts of institutionalized cruelty against enemy troops, prisoners of war, and civilians. As the German war machine advanced through Russia, it left a trail of devastation in its wake. Scores of villages were obliterated, and minorities, particularly Jews, were systematically targeted and subjected to horrific violence. Many were rounded up and executed, often through gruesome means such as poisoning in mobile gassing vans. Additionally, several cities suffered the twin scourges of looting and starvation, with Leningrad standing out as a tragic symbol of this brutality. The infamous 28-month siege of Leningrad saw the deaths of as many as 1 million civilians, a staggering toll of human suffering. In response to the relentless cruelty they endured, the Red Army, during its advance towards Berlin in 1945, showed little mercy. Hundreds of thousands of German civilians found themselves subjected to horrific atrocities, including summary executions, being burned alive in buildings, crushed by tanks, and even crucifixion in some cases. Disturbingly, according to certain studies, Soviet troops may have been responsible for the rape of as many as 2 million German women during the closing days of the war. The Eastern Front, with its unparalleled scale of violence and suffering, remains a haunting chapter in human history, serving as a stark reminder of the depths to which humanity can descend in times of war. 7. The last German POWs weren't released from the Soviet Union until 1956. The fate of German prisoners of war, POWs, in the Soviet Union after World War II is a somber chapter in the post-war period that is often less well known than other aspects of the conflict. While the Western Allies released their final prisoners in 1948, the situation for many German POWs in the USSR was significantly different and more protracted. After the war, a large number of German POWs in the Soviet Union were not promptly repatriated. Instead, they were detained for several more years, and many of them were forced into grueling slave labor conditions in various industries, particularly in copper and coal mines. These prisoners were subjected to harsh living conditions, inadequate food, and brutal treatment by their captors. Tragically, the mortality rate among German POWs in Soviet custody was alarmingly high. Estimates vary, but it is believed that anywhere between 400,000 to 1 million German POWs died while in Soviet captivity due to a combination of factors including exhaustion, disease, malnutrition, and the harsh conditions of their labor. Even after the war had ended, a significant number remained in Soviet hands. Approximately 20,000 German POWs were still held by the Soviets at the time of Joseph Stalin's death in 1953. The last group of around 10,000 prisoners didn't regain their freedom until 1955 and 1956, marking a full decade after the conclusion of World War II. The prolonged captivity and harsh treatment of German POWs in the Soviet Union remained a contentious issue between the two nations for years to come, contributing to the complexities of post-war relations during the early Cold War era.